Remember that paper that we took? I said to cut out at the beginning. Enough paper so we could trace around it and make a circle. Well, we're going to cut that circle out just inside the line, so it's just a little bit smaller than the circumference of our box. Just a little bit, not much. And we're going to glue that on to give us a nice finished bottom to this box. Okay, when we come back, I will show how to do that. Alright, you ready to cut out with me? So I took that piece of paper, I laid the box upside down, I put it on the paper, and then I took the pencil and just drew around the outline, you know, so that when I picked it up, I had a circle, the circumference of this box. Well, in the meantime, I also cut it out, and I just cut inside, just barely inside my line, because I want it just a little bit smaller than that. Alright, so now we have the bottom of our box. So, you know, we're going to glue that in place, and look how nice that's going to look. We're going to have a nice finished bottom to our box. This is where I want to take my Mod Podge again and just give it a thin coat right around here. Matter of fact, you could pull up this edge all the way around because we haven't glued it yet. It's good to reinforce this edge. So pull that edge up all around your box, the bottom of your box, and we're just going to put a light little gluing of the Mod Podge on your box. Now gently fold that back over. Try not to get any of that glue on you. You don't want that. Wiping off your hands if you need to, if you get any glue on you, and then I just like to go around there, crimp the edges a little bit with my pencil. Alright, we got that down for the most part. It's not the best of glue when it comes to this, but I really don't want to use a hot glue gun yet on it because it has a tendency to dry thick, and I don't want a big old clump under there. What I will do now is, now I will use a little bead of glue. If you could see, it's just right along the edge between the paper and the box of hot glue. I kind of want, it will spread out on the box. And the paper itself, which is a good enough adherence. Then you take your piece of paper that you cut out, your round circle, and you fit it on all of that. Once again, that glue is hot. Take your pencil and press it down. See, press it out to the edges. And make sure you also press inside, because remember how we put that Mod Podge on the box? That will help keep the paper in place also. And don't worry, if you get just a little bit outside that, see how, I don't know if you can see that or not, but you can see just a tiny bit of the underneath paper here. You can trim it later on. But right now, just glue it down. If it's not quite glued down, the edges sometimes takes a while to get down because that's hot glue. Just put a little more on. Spread it out. Okay. Secure any edge that is not secure. Just a little more hot glue. Have your parents help you on this one, your mom or your dad. Unless you're old enough to do it yourself. But still be careful, don't burn yourself. We don't need to harm ourselves. Alright. Now look at the bottom of our box. Wow! That looks professional, doesn't it? That's a very nice finish. Alright. Now you will see why I didn't add paper up here. Look what I can do with my lid. It goes on, it comes off quite easily. If I had added too much paper, it just would have been too bulky, and it'd be like, and more than likely your paper would have started to come off. But don't worry, you're thinking, oh, okay, wow, what is the lid going to look like? Is it going to look like that? Are we going to see that? And the pink paper, that's not too pretty, is it? Well, never fear. We're now going to cover the lid. All right, so when we come back, we're going to start on the lid. All right, now we're ready to cover the lid of our box. What I did is I measured the top of my lid from outside to outside, and it's about 4 inches. And then I measured the sides, and they're about 1 inch each. So I know I want at least 6 inches across in paper. I cut a little bit longer than 6 inches. It gives me some room to work with. Almost 7 inches. Give yourself that extra bit of paper. It's a nice square of the same decorative paper that you have used for your sides. And what I'm going to do now is paint the top of my box with the Mod Podge again. It doesn't need to be dripping wet, it just needs a nice coating of it. And I just find that this just helps hold that paper in place. Alright, then I'm going to put it where I want on the piece of paper. I put it right in the center because I know I'm going to need all that extra paper to cover the sides. So really press it down, press it in place. Okay? Maybe rub it down, put it in place. And now what I like to do is just to start running, holding the lid. So I'm just holding the lid like this, and I'm starting to run my thumb, or my whole hand, the palm of my hand actually, over, bending that paper over the sides. That just helps to show us our outline, see where we're at. Do we got it nice and smooth? Have we stretched out all the bubbles or air, any air pockets, any bubbles in the top? We want that totally flush with that box underneath the lid. Alright, now that I have that, I'm also going to start bending up along the sides just to see, make sure I have enough of that paper and glue. Like, yep, I know I have it. So now you can see you've got quite an excess of paper, don't you? This is where, if you're careful, you can take your scissors and trim some of the excess paper away, because it's a lot to work with. I'm not cutting too close to the lid of the box yet. See, there's excess there. But I'm taking off the big chunks, portions of the paper that I don't need. You can see that. Be very careful to not cut too low, because that paper has to come up the sides. So just be really careful in this area here. It's just so it's easier to work with. Alright, so I cut off a lot of the excess, but you can still see there's overhang, right? Okay. Now on a round box, and once again, it doesn't have the same forgiveness as, say, fabric. Fabric will let you pull it a little bit, tug it a little bit, nip it a little bit to make it fit a round circle. This is not as forgiving. But that's okay. We're going to cover it with something, you won't see it anyway. I'm going to take my Mod Podge now, again, and fold this paper back like we did before, and paint the sides of my box, of my lid rather. So just paint the sides of the lid all the way around. Being careful to not get any Mod Podge on your fingers, because you'll get it on your paper. You don't want it on your paper. So now we've painted all around this edge with our Mod Podge. Don't make it dripping. Just, you know. All right. Here's the hard part. I'm just going to start fitting that paper tightly over the edge of the box. We always want to work from the top of the box and pull it over the sides. We don't want to work from this side up, because it'll cause this to bubble up. We don't want that. We want it nice and taut. And so as you see, as I'm working around my lid, I'm getting what you would call in sewing pleats. You see the pleats through here? It's kind of bunching up on itself, but that's okay. That's the best we can do. We're going to cover it. Nobody's going to see it. Nobody will ever know except for you. Alright, I'm still making sure I'm working from the edge of the top of the lid, and pulling it over. Always working the edge of that lid out and over. Because if you went this way, it would bunch the paper up this on the top of the lid. You don't want that. You're always making sure you're pulling it nice and tight and pressing it down onto that glue that we have on the side of the lid. So you may need to reinforce with some hot glue. See where it came up a little bit there? We're going to pull that over the edge. So we want our edge really nice and taut, the paper as tight as possible, glued down as much as possible on the sides, always working from the top of the lid over the sides, pressing over, pressing over, pressing over, getting our pleats. Press our pleats down as much as possible. Run it on here, press it down a little bit on the table to get those pleats as tight as possible. Alright, now that we've done that, you see, oh, well, the lid looks nice, but look at the bottom. Not so nice. Well, you're right, it's not so nice. We're going to be very careful and trim the excess. See all that excess? That would be called selvage in sewing. So our selvage edge, we're going to trim it right in line with that lid. You don't want to, make sure you don't cut the lid. Take your scissors now and just gently go in there using your lid, bottom of your lid as a guideline, and just cut away the excess. If this is too hard for you, of course, have your mom help you with it. Let's just see how I'm doing that. Does that make sense? Now we have cut off the excess. Looks pretty good, right? You know, we don't have paper hanging over the edge. If you feel like this paper wants to lift up, then we'll have to hot glue it down. Just that little inside lip if it needs it. If it needs it, you can. Alright. Lid looks pretty good, right? Put it on our box. Wow, now our box looking pretty fancy, isn't it? It is pink and it is shiny. But now's the time to add the bling.